good afternoon. We're super excited to be here over at Franklin Park Art Center today for Lunch with the Arts. We are Carolyn and Logan of Hunt Country Jewelers. We've got a brick and mortar right in downtown Purcellville. But we're very lucky in all of this that our shop is actually at home. So we get to keep producing and keep working even when our storefront is open. So we thought we'd spend a little bit of time with you this afternoon and show you what we do and how we create each piece kind of from the ground up. I think one of the things we hear most often is that the kind of jewelry we make is prized when we describe it or when we say that we do art shows or describe it as handmade, because people don't think rings and diamonds and things like that as pieces of artwork, but they really truly can be. We have our shop assistant here with us today. Where are you?
Here,
Here's our shop assistant. He's the head of security. This is Bandit. So it's another benefit of working from home, although he's not super productive.
Back the opposite.
Yeah.
But he is fun.
So
and he's very secure. Very, very secure.
He's really vicious. So so we thought we'd just kind of get started with that. So I'm gonna flip around here. So this is Logan's metal bench. This is where a lot of the work actually happens. And Logan, I'll let you take us on a little tour of the workbench here.
So actually, for the most part, so a lot of times when we start in metal, this piece is already sort of in the works here. The first thing we have to do once a piece is in metal is there's actually a sprue attached, and so from when we actually threw it into metal.
Over there.
Do I? Mm-hmm. So this is actually an old silver sprue, and when you actually go from wax to metal, and we can get into what happens, but you actually typically have a lead that goes onto.
Bring it down. Actually, there we go.
There we go. Onto your piece. So. Once you have your piece designed and finished in wax, and we'll kind of work our way backwards, kind of jump right in the middle of the process here. So we're going to walk our way forward. So once you have your piece and it's sprued and it's in metal, you actually have to take off the sprue, and then you have to make sure it looks like it never existed, because metal had to get into the piece somehow, and the sprue is your inlet of metal into your cavity. So now once you have it, then the sprue has to disappear, and the whole surface has to be gone over. To take off any bad surface that the casting leaves on it. The casting always leaves a little bit of a matte surface on there. So you have to take that off and you have to polish it away. And then as at Hunt Country, the way my dad and I work, we actually correct things as we go. And that sounds sort of silly. Of course you do. But there's a lot of instances where once it's in metal, you simply take it from that point and you finish it exactly how it looks. And we really don't do that at all. We spend a lot of time in metal, because there are certain processes that you can do better in metal than you can in the wax stage. So nice cleans, sidelines, any long, straight, narrow groove, we'll touch that in metal to give it a nice quality, that type of thing. So all of that cleanup actually happens in metal. And then at that point, my dog would stop getting into everything. At that point, any side stones have to be set. So the side stones go in. So I have two that are in and just hammered. They're not cleaned up at all. And obviously we're missing our center stone. So the center stone goes in last, and then any cleanup work goes, any final polish happens after that. If there's assembly involved, you can assemble before you set stones is probably the best time to do it. There are instances where you have to set stones and then assemble. And you can do that so long as you're working with diamonds. You can put torch right on diamonds. In fact, as long as there aren't any inclusions in diamonds, you can actually melt gold right on top of a diamond. And technically, you're not going to hurt. However, if there's an inclusion in there and you heat it up, the inclusion might expand and pop your diamond in half. So you do have to pay a lot of attention to what you're working on. Sapphire, you can heat up And by the time it cools down, if you put boric acid on it, you've just frosted your whole surface. So you have to know if you're using a sapphire, can't put boric acid and heat it up. So there's a lot of little subtleties that you have to pay attention to when you start putting heat on a piece.
And most of what you do requires heat.
A lot of what we do for assembly requires heat.
Yeah.
So no question about that. But so once we have it here, side stones are in at this point. What actually I'd have to do next is clean this up. I have to clean this up. And then I actually have to seat the center stone. And so right now we have space for a gemstone that I don't have at the bench. But, and then we actually have to cut out the seat for it and make sure that the stone is in there, and you can up and set it out. If there's too much rubbing, then there's going to be too much pressure on the corners. You're likely to break it as you set it. So you have to make sure that you can set your stone in and then fold the metal over top. It's just nice and simple, I promise. So anyway, and at that point, then you clean up your prongs, make sure that you reduce them back to as much as you need to hold the stone securely, and then remove the rest so you're not actually visually impairing the gemstone. And then at that point, you give it a final polish, and that's it. You're all done.
Oh, it's so simple.
Yeah, it's no problem. But again, so we jumped in sort of the middle of the process.
Yeah, walk us back to the actual
all right, so let's walk backwards. And if you'd like
design and carving of a piece.
Right, and if you'd like more information, we actually made a whole series about how we make a piece from actually cutting the gemstone all the way through finishing it. So it's definitely worth checking out if you're interested. But let's walk our way backwards for a second. So we started sort of in the middle with the piece attached to the spur. If we go backwards before this was cast, this was actually the exact same thing except in wax. So you had this unit looked exactly like this, except it was in wax. And then we had a wax lead on it that stuck onto it. And then we put it onto a rubber cone. We surrounded that cone with a metal sleeve, metal cylinder, and we filled the whole thing up with plaster Paris. Once that plaster Paris, called investment, set, you take off the rubber part of the cone, and what you're left with is a wax that's stuck in a plaster Paris. It's stuck in an investment that's in the middle of the cylinder. When you put that whole oven, all the wax melts and burns away, and then now you're left with a metal cylinder that actually has a hollow cavity to it. So that's what we put in a centrifuge. You melt your metal right next to it. It's spring loaded, and you let the whole thing go, and then the metal throws itself right into your hollow cavity, and then that's when you're left with this.
And we do all of that here, yes?
Right in-house. And in fact, we actually refine our own metals, our own gold whenever we can. Platinum takes its own set of equipment. So a platinum centrifuge actually is a slightly different set of equipment than a gold or silver or brass or pretty much all the other metals. Because platinum melts so high that you can't actually take your torch off the platinum and let it throw before it starts cooling down too much. So platinum uses an induction vacuum type casting, so it's a little bit hello.
Hi, Paula.
So it's a little bit more complicated. But in general, so again, we're working our way backwards now from the middle. So we have our piece screwed up and it's in wax. Before that stage, we would have had the piece totally touched up in wax with the stones in it. And so while it's in wax, we actually have to take the stones out and remove all the stones because we don't want to actually cast those in place. Technically, you can cast diamonds, sometimes rubies and sapphires in place, but it's problematic. And when things go wrong, they go very wrong. So we don't. We've tried it, but we don't.
We try to avoid problematic situations in general.
When things go right, it's great. And when they go wrong, you have to dig that guy out, and it's a nightmare. So we don't actually cast stones in place. We do take them out and wax. And this is actually a good example of a piece that we're working on for a customer.
I'm going to see if I can't get close into this here.
And we're actually kind of right before we would disassemble it. So at this point, with this wax, I'm actually going to disassemble it in pieces, and then I'm going to reassemble it in metal around the stone. So I'm not going to actually fold metal over the stone. I'm going to cage it, if you will, and then I'm going to use a laser welder and zap it together at some seams. So hopefully you would never notice how it was put together. But you should, at this point, what I'd have to do, and this whole thing is totally surrounded in wax. So what I would normally do now is I'd actually cut it probably here, and I'll have to think about it a little bit, but here, maybe in one other spot, and I'm actually going to pull it apart, and then I'm going to have a couple pieces in wax, and I'm going to be able to set my stone aside. And once I have those pieces in wax, I can sprue those pieces up again, and then we can cast those. We can polish them, and then we're gonna clean them up, and then we have to reassemble it. Now, there's always hidden complications. Whenever you cast a piece, you have a 1 to 2% reduction in size. So what it means is that once we cast it and I put it back together, I actually have to open up all this work again and grind it out just a little bit, just to, so that the stone get used to. But it's just the nature of the beast. So that is something that we plan for. It's just these little minutia details that you have to think about for a while, until you hit them, you don't know what's coming.
And this is all hand carved wax. You don't use any CAD or computer aided design.
Nope, this is all by hand. So I have some of the tools here, but we pick up wax and we lay it down and we clean it up.
Sculpture.
Yep, it's sculpture. It's miniature.
Sculpture and wax around stones.
Using very advanced tools. We use an alcohol lamp. We use essentially a dowel rod with a needle, and we shape the needles. It's very, very advanced stuff. We go in and out of alcohol, in and out of heat. We pick up wax, we put it down. We heat a tool. We touch up a little bit.
We've got just some pieces here. So this is how all the pieces start, as just flat.
Just sheet wax.
Sheet wax.
This piece is almost done. We won't touch it, but we'll go right next to it. So we can heat up our tool. We can pick up wax. Whoop. Normally we'd hang on, let's see if I can stick this onto something so it hangs on a little bit better.
It's totally
Overexposed?
There we go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So we're going to heat up our tool just a little bit. So we have a little bit of wax on there, if you notice. So I'm going to just pick up a little bit, as much as I want.
I'm not sure that we're seeing.
Let's see if I can
There we go.
pick up just a little and set it down. I'm just going to build up a little bit on the side here. See if we can make a quick arch. All right, so the idea, you can put it down, you can pick some up, and then at some point, you can actually start to move it just a little. And as you do this, you let it cool, pick some more up, heat it up just a little, add just a little bit more. As you can see, we're dragging it just a little bit. And it's a slow process. But normally what I do is I'd start the other side of my arch while that side's cooling down just a touch. That first touch down is always fun. So I'm going to start building up this side just a little bit.
Is this a traditional jewelry making kind of method of manufacture?
No, not really, actually. My dad sort of got into this on his own. I think necessity is the mother of invention. He was shown something similar to this just by chance when he was much younger. And when he went into jewelry, not really knowing a whole lot better, he started by carving using a method like this. And then what he found out later was that for all intents and purposes, as far as the jewelry world was concerned, he made it up. So this is not the technique that's used. Most wax carving techniques actually is using a very hard plastic-like wax, and then using the same types of sharp drill bits and burrs and stuff that you normally use in metal, except they're used in wax. And it's more of a process of removal than building. So our process here, let's see if I can span this. Not quite. I'll need one more touch in a second. But our process here actually allows us to add wax very cold, remove it, and then touch it up, as in refine it as we see fit. So once I've added this wax here, we expand it. Now I have
you got a little arch there.
a little arch. It's a little crude arch, but at this point we can actually start to go back and we can start to touch it up there. And we can certainly remove wax if we want to. And we can make it a little bit cleaner. We can start going. We can scrape a little bit away. And then this tool right here has a circular end. And this one has a sharp point, and so I don't use sharp points to pick up and lay down wax, just to start touching up. So I'll use this one to fit into gaps I can't reach otherwise. And this is the stage now we call hot tooling, where we just touch up lines and take away some of the ripples and the inconsistencies. This guy, in contrast, is the opposite. This is obviously a big, large squared off end, and wax and sit it down at once. This is a tool to do it. So we don't actually use this one very much, but when you want it, you really want it, because you can actually move a lot faster. So anyway, so these are actually our main tools in wax. So we start with a very soft sheet wax most of the time, and then we'll either just start by putting a chunk on I use graph paper, but we also have ring mandrel, so we'll put a sheet on a ring mandrel, we'll stick the stone on the top, and we'll start working around it.
I'm gonna see if I can't get. So that's the little arch. See if I can't get it in.
2-minute effort, so let's not judge it too harshly here.
And then I don't know how much we saw of the actual piece you're working on. The left bench are quite bright.
I do have a lot of lights on my bench.
What is your favorite type of jewelry to create, like rings or pendants? Question.
Well, that's a good question, actually. Both have pros and cons. Pendants often have a lot more space to work with, so they can be kind of fun because you can actually design a whole concept around a pendant. But rings, in contrast, rings actually you see on your hand. So there are different angles of view from a ring. So for instance, there's this angle on a ring that you can look at that we can actually do design work on the sides. And a lot of times with the pendant, it's sort of square on, so you don't have that depth that rings give you. So sometimes pendants can be fun because you have a lot more space to work with, and rings. But
I know what my favorite is.
What's that?
I've been asking for a tiara since we started dating, and I still don't have one.
She got a hairpiece.
I got a hairpiece.
Solid gold dragon hairpiece.
But it's not a tiara. So I think tiaras are my favorite pieces.
Yeah, I'll work on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So since we're kind of stuck at home, has that changed anything really for you?
On the production side, not really. We I have a couple of projects that are taking me a long time. So this hiatus isn't such a bad thing in my case. However, that being said, it could certainly be better on the other end of things. So my production side has not really been all that affected, but the retail end of things is definitely not quite the same. So yeah, it's certainly affected us, but me personally, sitting right here at the bench, my day hasn't changed a whole lot.
Do you have you're working on a lot more stock?
Yes.
Pieces, for future.
Mm-hmm.
And it is competition season. We've got a couple of competition pieces in the works that'll be submitted in the fall. So are you really taking the time to kind of play with design, or are you coloring within the lines, or what's your kind of artistic
we've
mode
been able to,
at the moment?
We've been able to play a little bit. The hiatus has definitely allowed us a little bit of extra time to play around. We did get to make a sort of piece that's already finished, and there's trying to think of some other stock pieces, and we've been able to play just a little bit extra, play in air quotes. But I mean, we do still have some commission work that we're working on, and the one that I've sadly been putting off is a big one, so I can spend a lot of time on that one. This one, actually, in all fairness, I spent quite a bit of time on this piece that we've been showing.
That's a pendant.
That's a pendant, and
with a boulder opal in it.
Yeah, a boulder opal. So the chain will go through the back. So pieces like that one will take me quite a bit of time. The more surface space, the longer it takes, just sort of by default. So yeah, that's something that's the type of piece that we'll spend a lot of time on. And it's been sort of nice just recently, being able to spend as much time as needed on those and not not worry about it at all, in a sense. So that part of it hasn't been too terrible.
So do you have some finished pieces? Things that are...
I think we do. So
we've seen some waxes and some raw castings and stuff.
Yep. So this piece right here.
I don't know how
this
is the iPhone.
Is that going to work? Hang on.
Do you design a piece around gems or fit the gem into a designed piece?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
To answer that question, we actually do both. There are plenty of times when we're given a gemstone and carte blanche. Hey, do what you like, or I have some guidelines, I have some styles that I like, and let's say it's a commission piece. They'll show up with a stone, or they'll have a stone in mind, and we start talking about the designs that are just the design aspects that the customer likes, and from there we will design a piece around a stone. Other times we have our own, or we have a design that we have that we like and we know it's popular, and we've just cut a stone recently and it looked like they'll fit, and so we will take the stone that fits and we will put it right into that piece that is very close, and we'll make whatever adjustments are necessary. And so that would be the reverse case. So we do go both ways with it. Once we have a piece that we really like, we might recreate that piece. Although when I say recreate, we will make a mold of a piece, but once we take an injection and we have a new stone for it, it's essentially a frame, and we have to touch up that frame. We have to make sure the stone fits into that frame, and we have to make sure that it looks like the stone was always made for that frame.
So you change shapes, sizes.
Absolutely.
Even in basic frames, design themes that we may use over and over again, but really and truly, we're not producing anything as exact duplicates ever.
Almost ever, no. So here's a good example, actually. So let's say that this is a piece that you really liked, but you didn't like the stone and you don't like yellow gold.
That is really pretty green.
So, but let's say you don't like green at all. And you wanted red. So, and you like garnet. So, and you had a garnet in mind, and it was 4 times the size of this one. So that would be of a time when we would actually take your stone, and you like these design elements, but your stone's 4 times the size. We will more than likely recreate some of this to be proportional to yours. Although stylistically it would look very similar, it would probably be proportionally larger. Or you might tell me that no, I like the thinnest shanks on earth, and I want it to be even narrower than what you have, but I like the design working again. We're starting with this as an idea. We have a stone and we're working a design around a stone. So that we do that quite a bit, and we're very comfortable with it. We've had plenty of times where someone says, that ring's perfect, but boy, I don't like yellow gold. I want that in white. And so we're going to create something similar. Maybe with the same stone we'll take it out. Probably not. Normally we can try and supply with another stone that's very similar, and then we can recreate the same thing or something very close in white. So we do that a lot. No problem there. But it's sort of interesting because everyone that comes in kind of has their own idea of what they like. And as a guy who actually puts it into 3D and puts it all together, a lot of these ideas are not my ideas. I never would have thought of them on my own. I can take your thoughts and put them into 3D as one unit, but it's not necessarily something I would have come up with. So it's
a bit of a collaborative effort on the commission pieces.
And that part of it to me is a lot of fun because every one of them is sort of this exercise that when you're in grade school is like, hey, here's a square, circle, and triangle. Make something fun. And it's obviously a little bit more complicated than that, but it is sort of fun for us as we get to sort of play with. There's all sorts of hidden challenges as we go, and if you don't have some sort of challenge in life, I think we all go just a little bit crazy.
Kind of get bored working on the same thing.
Oh yeah, we definitely get bored doing the same thing over and over. So
now we don't stock lines, so we don't order in finished pieces for our store at all. So every piece in there has been kind of sculpted from the ground up. You or your dad? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What about the gemstones?
Well, it's funny you asked. My mom is a lapidary, so she actually cuts many of the gemstones that we have, colored gemstones that we have in-house. And in all of her years, and my dad's also a lapidary, although he's cut a couple dozen pieces like I have. My mom's cut a couple thousand pieces. So she is the real lapidary. But between all of our years of experience, my mom and dad actually developed their own diamond pattern. And so they actually have been playing around with gemstones and cutting and faceting long enough that they actually they started developing their own patterns, and they are quite it's vocab word for today, lapidary.
Lapidary.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's a very fancy word. It means and actually, we say we cut gemstones, or that Claire cuts the gemstones, but that's a misnomer. It's grinding.
Yeah.
At all. We think of cutting like scissors, but really it's a sandpaper lap, and you put the stone down on it. Unfortunately, this year, we're not able to have our in-person Western Loudon art and studio tour, but normally we get the wax demonstrations, we get all our casting pieces, we get the lap machine out, and everybody gets to give it a try. And so you can sit at a lapidary machine and cut your own gemstone when you come to visit. So hopefully there'll be some sort of virtual tour that weekend, but put it on your calendar for 2021.
And in the videos that we actually made a piece is the intro to jewelry at Hunt Country Jewelers. If you look on YouTube, we do show a piece of the stone. The whole piece is based around an aquamarine. So we show that aquamarine piece of rough before we cut it. Please try and get past the first couple videos. They're pretty rough, but no pun intended. But once you actually look at the piece of rough aqua, we dop it, so we put it on the stick so you can cut it. We show the cutting process and the equipment that's used and how it's used. We transfer it from the bottom to the top. So from the pavilion to the crown of the stone, we cut the crown, and then so now we have a piece of rough, and then we have a finished piece. So you can see sort of the steps all the way through. And then once we have our finished stone, we start designing a piece around it. So it shows the basics of waxwork. Sort of, we have an introduction to waxwork and how we carve, which we haven't shown another arch, and a few other things. And then we show creating a piece completely from start, casting it, assembling, whole 9 yards. And it's a 2-tone piece. So it's a little bit complicated, and we kind of did that on purpose so that it shows more parts of the process. But definitely check that out. If you're interested in how we actually make a piece start to finish, the total footage is about 45 minutes, broken up into about 10 or 12 videos, and they're all kind of 3-5 minutes each. So if you actually want to see us totally start to finish, that's definitely the way to do it. And we use a lot of the terminology that we just do in regular life, like fancy words like lapidary and curlicues.
Mm-hmm.
So
curlicues is my favorite technical term.
We use it a lot. So
we say also with Franklin there, welcome to Dan and Diane, everybody else watching. So the funny, I was going to say, when we talked to Claire about cutting stones, she's very self-deprecating about it, and she says, no, I'm a craftsman, I'm not an artist. But we really do yeah, we tend to see the combination, I think, here of craft and artistry.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's no different in carving the stones as it is in designing the rings. There's first an artistic concept, there's pattern, repetition, and then there's the craft of actually executing those artistic visions.
I think anytime when you strive to be a really good craftsman and you achieve that level, it doesn't take a whole lot.
Hi, Sylvia.
Hi, Sylvia. It's not a whole lot longer until you start putting your own twist on things. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing that and you have full capability of doing exactly what's in front of you, but you have purposely chosen to tweak it the way you like because you think it's for the best, I think at that point you're very quickly walking into the world of artisanship. And my mom, Claire, is definitely in that world, if not farther along. I think at this point she will routinely look at a pattern and go, I should tweak these angles, or I should tweak these actual numbers so I can get the pattern that I want and get the light return that I want. And I think that's definitely in the world of artisanship personally. Whether it actually fits a definition or not is it's up to someone else's interpretation. What I find sort of funny about what we do, sort of start to finish, from stone cutting all the way through a finished piece, is that we've actually sort of landed in this niche that doesn't really fall into the category of classic jeweler. because classic jeweler is a little bit more in the world of at this point, not historically, but at this point, our classic jewelers are more assemblers, and
More jewelry.
more jewelry. There's another piece right there.
Let's see if we can't.
But we actually don't.
Oh, that's how we get it.
There we go.
That's a cabochon ruby, right?
Yes, it's a cab ruby.
So there's our very technical
Curly
curly cues with diamonds in them.
So, but we also don't necessarily fall into the world of artists.
Skinny in the back.
Because what we wear in the world of jewelry, there's some artisanship in jewelry
You
that
don't need to be that close to my face.
right.
Nobody wants to be that close to my face.
Is that in focus?
No.
Okay, there we go. Some of the world of fine arts in jewelry takes the jewelry out of being wearable. So we don't necessarily like to think that we go that far with the world of fine arts in the world of jewelry. But we consider ourselves more of an artist than average in the jewelry world. So we feel like we're kind of walking the line.
So here's that green. Do everything one-handed here. Use some focus there. So this one's a little bit different. It has a Celtic knot pattern in the shank. So those are actually really hard to do because they need to be symmetrical and super clean.
Even.
Try and find the exact right focus spot. That's pretty good. And then this green is a tourmaline.
Yeah.
And Claire cut that one, I think.
She did.
So diamonds on the sides. That one's yellow gold. What else we got?
Another tourmaline.
How about a pink tourmaline? So white, yellow gold. More open and pierced work in the sides there.
Sort of some silly trivia. So whereas an open weave that is repeated, I'll call that kind of little for difficulty. A straight set of curlicues, what we call curlicues, that's much more organic. In a sense, is a little to make because your eye will accept.
Thank you, Sylvia.
More irregularities, but the more clean tailored a piece is with much more clean straight lines, actually in a sense the more difficult it is to make because your eye will not forgive lines that are incorrect. You immediately see them and you immediately recognize that they're wrong. So in a way, you have the cleaner and simpler the lines, the harder it is to actually make, even though it may not be more complicated.
So that's a little diamond there in rose gold. So yeah, we do lots in color, but we definitely do diamond too. Traditional, non-traditional, all sorts of stuff.
Diamond takes its own set of cutting tools. So whereas we understand diamond patterns and fastening in diamond and how they do it, we are not lapidaries for diamond. We are not, that is not what we cut. It is a set of tools, and the guys who do it are absolutely phenomenal. They are incredible craftsmen, and I'll tell you, they, as far as artisans, they are artisans too. So even though some of these guys do the same thing every day, what some of these guys can do is just absolutely phenomenal with a diamond, and their ability to actually fool my eye, let alone your average a consumer's eye with symmetry and how they can make a stone look symmetrical that actually isn't, is pretty cool. So it's sort of fun to all these little hidden niches within the whole industry and where everyone kind of fits, and the guys who are really good at what they do, how they kind of maneuver within their talents. It's fun.
So I might be a little biased, but I happen to think that these guys are really good at what they do.
Very kind of you.
Like he's saying, to carve out kind of a niche in both the artist world and the jewelry world, and try and do together with super nice materials and super fun materials. And so that's kind of just a look into our process, our artistic manufacturing process, and how the pieces come together once we either have a stone or have a design. Anything else?
Not really.
Commonly asked questions or
Does anyone
cool things?
Anyone have any questions for us? I'm trying to think of some of our most common questions. And I can't necessarily think of any off now that I'm being pressed.
Right. So we really appreciate everybody tuning in and checking out what we do. We are not going anywhere, and the shop will be back open as soon as it's allowed. We're really busy producing here and loving the creative chance to keep working. We really appreciate the support for the arts that our community gives, and we're really grateful to Franklin Park for hosting this. Our website is pretty easy. It's huntcountry.com. That's what happens when you get a website in the mid-90s. You get huntcountry.com. And our entire inventory is up there. We're doing video appointments for design, for new projects. We have launched a kids gemology detective kit that we will ship to you. And we're creating videos that, trust me, look a lot better than this one. But we are, you get to follow along with those videos at home. You do your kids gemology detective kit, and they are $20. Shipping's included, and we hope that they will assist people in their newfound homeschooling efforts.
And containment.
Their newfound efforts to entertain their children while not letting them run amok. That's kind of a big theme in our household right now.
Oh,
So that's our goal there. And we're really looking forward to seeing everybody in person again. But in the meantime, we'll stay connected kind of on all our virtual platforms here. And I think that's...
Yeah, I think that's about it.
That's about it.
Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah.
Feel free to check out our website or find us on YouTube for more
Leave
information
questions
about us.
here. We'll pop back in and answer. We'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
For people who didn't catch it live, we're totally sitting around with Facebook all day. So, happy to answer any questions. We hope everybody's staying healthy, safe, sane, and we'll see you later.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Bye.